Hey, you're listening to Trailer Rewind, a monthly conversation about movies you may have missed in theaters and are now available on streaming services. Every month we dig into the archives and view a film that Pete and Andy talked about in their trailer picks. JJ and I watch it and have a very spoilery conversation about it. Today we're going to be talking about Burnt. This was Pete's pick from August 28th, 2015. Today is January 16th, 2018, and Burnt is currently available on Netflix. Before we go any further, you should check out our expanding back catalog for this show and its sibling shows at thenextreel.com. If you stumbled upon us, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast app or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And whether you've just found us or have been listening for a while, you can definitely be part of our community. You can support us as a patron on patreon.com/thenextreel. That gets you into our Slack group where there's always a fun conversation about films. And this week, there's been a bit of discussion about the current Die Hard series and the quality of the sequels as Pete and Andy are working their way through that.
Or lack of quality.
Or lack of quality. A few people have jumped ahead or have worked their way through the franchise and are on the last one in the series, and there's just, I guess, discussion about whether that one's worth actually sitting all the way through, and that's the one that I have not yet seen.
I haven't seen it either.
So, yes. So, in addition to being able to participate in engaging conversations like that, you also get exclusive Patreon-only weekly Saturday matinee episodes, which is the home of the trailer picks and discussions of weekly film news and lists. And you know how we love our lists.
Yeah.
So, JJ, Pete said he loves movies that take place in the kitchen almost as much as he is a fan of zombie movies.
That's crazy talk. He's a massive zombie fan.
Exactly. And he thought Bradley Cooper looked great. And I think it sounds like Pete might have a little thing for Bradley Cooper.
Sure.
I'm not sure.
Sure. I do too. It's cool.
He's one of those best friends we haven't met yet.
Yeah.
Director John Wells, Pete noted, was a writer of many episodes of TV shows like ER and The West Wing that he was a big fan of, so he was really excited about that. And Andy pointed out that it was scripted by Stephen Knight, and he was very excited about that aspect of it as well, because I know that he's a big fan of some of the scripts Stephen Knight has written, like Locke was one that I knew he had seen and enjoyed very much. So this film, Burnt, is the second film starring Bradley Cooper and Sienna Miller.
What was the first one?
First one was American Sniper.
Oh, okay. So I haven't seen that. Got it. Okay, yeah. Cool.
So, and I haven't either. So after seeing this, do you really think they have the right chemistry to deliver a satisfying film?
That's a really good question. And looking at this movie, it's unfortunate because I don't think it's necessarily supposed to be about chemistry between the two of them. I mean, jumping, like we're spoiling, eventually they do find a romantic connection. I never felt like that was actually a part of the movie. And that wasn't really what I was going for. So, you posed that question to me, and I think the character that Bradley Cooper plays, this Adam Jones guy, and they actually had, I think it was Mario Batali be the chef consultant for the thing. They really had him try to embody this really sort of not unemotional, like really sort of jerk that is a chef. And so any chemistry, I don't know if it's a fair thing. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know if it's fair to talk about their chemistry here because they didn't have it, but I also feel like that was purposeful in the movie.
Well, you think about the roles that they have. So he has the mentor, and he finds her and sees that she's talented and skilled. So almost as an apprentice, right? Of somebody that he needs and depends on. And it's really her expertise that helps him get to where he is, because as she points out, he's old school.
Right.
He's outdated, and she's going to bring in some new trendy stuff. This is the way cuisine is moving. This is the new direction, not this old stuff. There's a line she has where she says, they talk about the frying pans is like the museum. Like nobody cooks that way anymore.
Right.
And so I thought the dynamic between the two of them was interesting. I was hoping for more of that. And I was intrigued because I think it was in IMDb, like in their little trivia section, Bradley Cooper had said something about, because of the fact that they had worked so closely together on American Sniper, which was just, I think, a year before, it helped them sort of shortcut to get to that, what they needed to work with each other in some of those more intense scenes.
Yeah, and I guess that's the point I'm trying to make too, is that I think they nailed the sort of cold working aspect of the film.
Okay.
So when we're talking about chemistry, if we're talking about the fact that they do connect in a intimate, loving way by the end of the film, I don't know that they do that, but they did exactly what I was looking for in terms of this sort of ode to hot cuisine, and this really like this power stress. He called it violence at one point. Environment for a kitchen, and I think they nailed that, and I think that was what was more important to me about this movie.
So was this what you expected it to be?
Well, no, and I think the reason specifically why is you mentioned that Pete, when he brought up the trailer, he talked about how much he liked movies that take place in the kitchen. I don't have that similar affinity. I haven't seen Chef. That's one that people have brought up in relation to this movie too, and I'm trying to think. The only movie that I can really continually think about, I'm thinking back to some old like Sarah Michelle Gellar movie where she has a magic crab that helps her bake things with love. I don't remember the title of it. It's like one of her early movies with Freddie Prinze Jr. I'm gonna have to look it up as we're talking about it. But in general, like I'm not really connected with that as a scene setter for films. Like zombie films I get, but so no, I didn't bring a whole lot of expectations to this movie. That being said, it was a very powerful film for me. It really nailed a lot of emotional cues for me. It was a great emotional ride for me, and specifically about Adam Jones, the Bradley Cooper recovery, and what he was doing in recovery and how he was trying to get back. I won't say that I liked Adam Jones, but that's just because that sort of jerky character trait that is supposed to be indicative of chefs is something that I don't really particularly have affinity towards. That being said, the story, the real human story that goes into going through the negativity and the addiction and the things that actually had him hurt his own life, and then coming through it with recovery, through making amends, and through really actually kind of traditional 12-step things, I really, really liked it. And it really hit me in a powerful emotional way. So I didn't expect that. And I was really happy with the result.
Wow, you had a completely different reaction to this film than I did.
That's fair.
That's interesting because I was interested. I was intrigued because I didn't know what your background was to bring to this film, like where this film falls. Because for me, it sort of felt like it wanted to do a lot of different things, and it just never really got there for any of the different ways that I thought it was going to go. And I've seen Chef, and actually, ironically, this film actually one of its titles had been Chef at one point, but then the Jon Favreau film got out there first, so there was a whole battle of like, okay, we got to change this title. So it was of that time. There were lots of films like this, this chef, type of thing. So I thought, well, is it because I'm carrying baggage from that one? I thought, no, I'm coming to this because it's a different type of story. Yes, you have a chef, you've got cooking, you've got lots of these just beautiful shots of food. But for me, what I thought this set up from the beginning was almost like an Ocean's 11 thing, where you've got a guy who's got something in his past. And the whole beginning part is like, he's going around, he's putting his team together. Sure. And it's like, okay, the mission, the job is get the 3rd Michelin star. So I'm back. I've been out of the loop. I'm coming back. I'm calling in favors. We're getting the old gang together, finding some new blood, and we're going to pull off this big heist, basically, the big job of getting the 3 Michelin stars. And so that's what I'm expecting. And it didn't do that. Okay. And so then I thought, okay, it's
definitely not lighthearted like that though either.
No, yeah. And it's not. And then I thought, okay, it's about a guy battling his demons from the past and how is he going to overcome them? And it just didn't get there enough for me. It seemed to me it felt like it's trying to accomplish way too many things. There's a lot of backstory. There's a lot of history that it's setting up at the front end of all these characters that we're introduced to, what his relationship is to them, the conflicts that he's had with each of them. And it just seemed to be just front loading so much history. And I thought, okay, what is all this leading to? And it didn't really, to me, satisfyingly fulfill any of those pieces, and it focused on him and what he wanted to do, which I thought, great, it's his story, but it just left us with these hanging threads. Like, for example, there's the new young chef. I think his name's David.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's like, hey, you want to work for me? Would you, how much would you pay to work with me? And it's a really interesting, scene that he's setting up of, if you're going to learn from me, you should pay to learn from me. And hey, can I stay at your place? And we get that intro, and I thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting dynamic of the young kid that really wants to learn. And all we get for the rest of the movie is Adam yelling at David because he screwed something up, and there's not really any payoff to any of that. We don't see anything really about, at least any significant time with David to see, is he learning? How is he responding to this? How is he improving himself to ultimately maybe help Adam, accomplish the goal of the 3 stars?
Yeah.
It was a setup at the beginning and no payoff at the end.
So that's fair, and I get what you're saying, and I think that potentially the reason why my viewing of the film looks so different is because I saw those setups, and immediately then the first time that the first night, their opening night, when it completely fails and he blows up at everyone, literally, he blows up at everyone. That's when I realized that those weren't setups, that the movie is about him and about his journey. So David's journey is not inherently important to the story of this film. This is just my interpretation, but is not inherently important to the story of this film. It's actually how Adam relates to David. And so the journey or the payoff is really like, as it actually sounds kind of cheesy, and this is something that I tend to buy into in movies, is the family dinner. Right? Like David's the guy who makes the pie, right? So little stuff like that. It's the subtle change, but again, it's all focused on this Adam Jones character, as opposed to these other characters. And I can definitely see how, if you took it from an Ocean's 11 perspective, where you have each of these characters with some measure of significance to the ultimate goal of the story, then that is thin, right? Then the story is weak. That being said, I mean, what a great concept for it to knock those pins down right away and say, no, this is his story, and then have the ultimate payoff be, we do what we do. Which, that line, when when the real Michelin folks come in, we do what we do, was really powerful for me. As opposed to the frenetic, crazy, terrible environment that we expect from a kitchen, and that we have seen demonstrated already a couple times in the film. He embraces the team, and he embraces the support that he has. I really bought into his character story for that. And it could be because I love Bradley Cooper. It also could be that this is the kind of drama that I really enjoy.
Well, I enjoy Bradley Cooper, and I want to enjoy this film because it seemingly has everything that I think that I would enjoy and appreciate. And I guess for me, the turn that Adam takes from being it's all about me and I'm going to control everything, because as we see when he's in that kitchen, he's on everybody and everything's got to be just perfect, and he's double checking everybody. And then to get to that turn, at the end, as you say, where he says, we do what we do, and we're in this together. It's not, he's got to that point where it's about the team, the restaurant, everybody, not just him getting his star for him. And to me, I just didn't, I guess, track that transition, or where did it happen? I didn't have that crystal point where I can say, here's the turn for him, because we have the crisis moment where they think they have the Michelin judges there, and his past comes back to haunt him because one of his team members basically betrays him and puts some spice in with the salt, swaps something up as payback for something Adam did to him when he called the health inspector, released rats, and the guys were basically screwed him over big
so
time.
Terrible, yeah.
So he says to Adam, that's for Paris, and sets him over the edge. And I just didn't see the transformation of how he gets back on track, his realization that this stops being about him, because we get a montage of clearly time's passing, but I don't have enough detail or context for the little clips of the montage to see he's becoming a better person. He's changed his attitude about the kitchen and how it works. And I just didn't see that clearly enough for me to get to, it makes sense that now he's made this turn and now he's a different person. It just wasn't. That's
totally fair.
I guess,
and I guess the reason why in my initial thoughts of the film, I talked about really sort of traditional 12-step processes with it, is that if you kind of track his journey as opposed to looking for a big character turn from him, and you look at the initial part of the film as the shucking of 1,000,000 oysters as a penance, and then trying to figure out a way to make amends, you can actually look at that big Michelin sabotage as potentially an amends. And if it's that, because honestly, I kind of look at that big, like that's a climax, one of the climactic moments of the film. It's definitely one of the big crises of the film. And I think that inserting it in that way, to have it break down in a way that's really simple, especially when he's being such a control freak and is really, you see him taste everything before it goes out. So how could that really happen? It feels a little bit set up for the film. But then if I put it in context of his relationship with Michelle, this person who sabotaged his food, as this was his amends, right? And then taking it through this whole drama of the film and where he goes and how he actually finds redemption through his own recovery. That's where it became really powerful for me. I agree that as a story element that it was somewhat weak, but for the context of the whole, it really worked for me.
This is one of the things that frustrates me about a film like this is I always want to come to a film and give it the benefit of the doubt of there are, hundreds and hundreds of people that put their time and energy into this, and I know there's a vision of what this film is to be, and so I know no one sets out to make a really, really bad film, and I'm not saying this is a really, really bad film. I just felt like it fell short, and so I'm trying to figure out where my perception and experience of the film is not aligning with what their vision of what this film is supposed to be is, and I think you're pointing me to some things which is helping me, I think, appreciate what the intent of the film is, because that's what often frustrates me is what is this film trying to do, because I'm not getting what this film is trying to accomplish.
Sure.
And so I think you're teasing out some things that I didn't see, and I think, all right, that's interesting, different way to look at it that I may have missed out on. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more.
Well, and the other point I would add to it is that I think it's visually really attractive. The film is very, very, it is made as an ode to cooking and to process and to what goes on in really, really nice restaurants. I don't know if it's particularly accurate. I read some reviews on IMDb about the film where people were kind of, calling it out for not being exactly how things happen in a kitchen. I don't know that that's necessarily important for the story that they were willing to tell. Again, if I'm buying into the context of Adam Jones's recovery, and that's what the story is about, in the sort of subculture idea of this cooking world where we have to take it as given that he is this wonderkind for cooking, I really think they did a good job of like simple things like popping the colors, taking time with the things that they were showing us in the way that things were cooked, in the way that things were presented. There were some really nicely set up shots for that. Not a whole lot of movement in them, but it was really kind of like a flip book for the beauty of cooking. And that's why, I mean, if we go back to Pete's recommendation of this, by the way, the Sarah Michelle Gellar movie is called Simply Irresistible, with a tagline that says, "A magical crab works wonders for a terrible chef's culinary skills, leading her towards the man of her dreams," who is not played by Freddie Prinze Jr. It's played by Sean Patrick Flannery. But regardless, that's my one experience with chef movies, and it's not the same, and it's not as good. This was really, I thought this was really classy, and the way that they approached it when they tried to make a dramatic film that was based in this subculture of chefs, of high-powered chefs and extremely expensive and extremely important cuisine. I think they did a really good job of that, and I thought it was really beautiful in that way too.
Oh yeah, I agree. The film, the food shots, it's got gorgeous, food scenes in the kitchen. I really like that. Accuracy. You've got to shortcut some things. You've got to do what works best for the story. You've got to work within the limits of, we have a camera crew running around in this kitchen filming, right, people working. So yeah, there's going to be compromises and things. But to me, it really holds that up and says, hey, this is important, and we're going to treat this with respect. And from what I've read on IMDb and the trivia and background, they had a lot of chefs that were there training the actors and how to do things. And I always respect that when filmmakers say, we value this so much that we want to bring in the experts so that we can do it justice to how we're going to present this in film. We're not going to just have, what do you think a chef does? We're going to get trained chefs or master chefs come in to train. And I think that shows.
And I feel like that came through in a way that didn't come through in Simply Irresistible.
Exactly. So I want to come back to looking at his sort of penance as a key point, because as I said, a lot of when we meet him at the beginning, he's it's the oysters, going to shuck a million oysters, and we get a voiceover sort of explaining how he got to that point, sort of what is his little bit of background, and as I said, a lot of the story is up front, all this history. So we learn a lot about his past. So I want to sort of walk through that. What are the sins of his past that he's paying penance for? Because we do have the people he owes money to that continually just rough him up throughout the film.
Drug money, specifically.
Drug money, which he has, and I think it's one of these sort of save the cat moments of, people have wanted to help him out and help pay off this debt, and he's said, no, I will take care of this myself.
Right.
Because he's got lots of friends with lots of money that could have helped him out. And he's like, no, so it's that sort of, he's an honorable person. He may be a jerk in the kitchen. He may be rude and you may hate the way he behaves in the kitchen, but hey, we're going to give you this because he's an honorable guy who's going to pay off his debts. But we also have, we've got the betrayal at the Paris restaurant that comes back to bite him. But we also have his relationship with the other
chef,
with the other chef, exactly, who's got his restaurant, who's sort of at the top of his game, and there's this rivalry. And this is the thing that's interesting to me is there's this sort of I don't know how to describe the relationship that they have, because they're rivals, but they're respectful of each other. But they worked together when they were getting started. And so that's the part that to me is, I try to tease out what to make of that, of what Adam gets from that relationship of rivalry. Is it two competitors trying to always one-up each other? So I don't know if you could maybe just sort of talk about how you see that working towards Adam's sort of ultimate transformation.
Well, I think that in general, it's kind of summed up when that character's name is Montgomery Reese, right? This other chef that's doing it. And when the other chef literally saves him from suicide, and Adam asks him the next morning after he makes him a fabulous omelet, because this movie's all about food, why did you help me? And he says, he gives him three lines total, where he says, you're better than me. We need you, meaning the community needs you.
Right.
We need you to push us to places we haven't been before. So it's kind of like the part that I get into this about how Adam's path through this movie is how he believes that he's in control. He believes that he is the one that's doing all this. And what the breakdown is told him from the sins in the past, and even from the sins, the amends and the things that are coming here, his path through these steps is for him to learn that he needs people and that people need him. And for me, that's just such a beautiful sentiment, and something that people don't really talk about and don't really necessarily express in film. And I think they do a really good job of doing this in this movie. If you get beyond some of the things that people look at as potentially, this big sabotage piece that's kind of feels like Deus Ex Machina, for the purpose of the story, as opposed to something that would actually happen. If you can get beyond that kind of stuff and look at the purpose of the film, I think it's really about humanness and what it's like to be the top person at something. And he talks about that too, that he was maybe given too much success too young, and he didn't know what to do with it, so he sabotaged it. So you take a look at how that can mess with someone's head, and how really as people we just need people, and people need us too. I don't know. I found that to be really beautiful. And in that scene, I never expected him to help him when he's trying to suffocate himself with the freeze dry condom, because every time these two characters interact earlier in the film, everybody's trying to make sure that there's someone with them so they don't beat each other up. But that moment of tenderness is again a point of the idea behind, making amends, paying penance, learning about what true love is in the community, in the universe, and how to give and accept it. I may be overstating it, but this is where the movie hit me. That's why this kind of drama works for me.
So you're saying that Adam Jones has Luke Skywalker syndrome?
In what way? I actually like this better than The Last Jedi. So
So of a young man who's told he's got all this
Right,
talent
yes.
and carries this burden of people have high expectations of him, and so he's got to live up to this myth or this legend that people have sort of put upon him, and he's got to carry that burden alone.
Yeah, so what he does is he isolates and makes himself, milk Zen cows on a random island until he just can't do it.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
So, okay.
I like it.
So it's a similar thing of, okay, yeah, I can.
That's what this is. This is Kitchen Wars,
Kitchen
The
Wars.
Last Jedi.
So the other story that sort of is woven into his past is we get a little bit about his mentor, Jean-Luc.
Yeah.
Because Jean-Luc passed away.
His father figure.
His father figure. He gets the knives, but he had a relationship with Jean-Luc's daughter, who's played by Alicia Vikander.
Yep.
And perhaps I'm biased because I read about this, because as I said, I just struggled putting everything together. And I guess I'm perhaps just latched onto something that I can grab as an excuse to point to say, yes, this is why I have problems with this film. Her character, that storyline was not part of the original script. Harvey Weinstein basically said he was so enamored of her that he asked her to play a part in the film, a part that did not exist in the original script. So Harvey decides, I like her. We're going to put her in this movie. Fix it.
Put
Make
the
it
kid
work.
in the picture. Yeah,
Put the kid in the picture.
And of
yeah.
course, with the current state of affairs, that makes us just like cringe. But
Right.
yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, who would have paid off his debt if she didn't? I actually like the way that happened in the story. I don't know where they go with that part of the story if she's not in it. What do you think?
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out. Is I thought, well, if I take that out, because then again, I'm focusing more on sort of like the team, sort of heist and job. It's like then if I eliminate that story altogether, then I get more time to flesh out his relationships with each member of his team, which is what I was looking.
What you wanted, yeah.
Wanted for. As I want more time with. Okay, here's more with the kitchen. Here's more with how the team works together, or how the team is trying to work together despite his arrogance and ego getting in the way. That dynamic I wanted to see more of, because I loved, seeing, I want, with a movie like this, I want to be in the kitchen more. I want to see the dynamics of how they work or don't work. Let me see the dysfunction that's going to lead to the failure, so that then I can see what the functioning kitchen looks like that's going to lead to our success.
Right, and that was all backstory in this movie.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I get it, again, that wasn't where I was going with the movie, so
Right.
I can see how that would be disappointing, especially if you were looking for the Ocean's 11 vibe, because it definitely doesn't go to that.
No, not at all. I was expecting so much to like this, and then so disappointed that I did not like it as much as I hoped to like it. It's like, why can't you be the film I want?
What about the Tony and Adam relationship? I think they dealt with that in a very lighthearted and so a dramedy sort of way. I thought they did that well.
Oh no, yeah, no, with Daniel Brühl's character,
yeah, with the crush that he had on Bradley Cooper and everything.
No, those two guys. That's the partnership that has to exist. I think they handled that really well. There's again characters that have a history with each other. I mean, apparently in the world of high cuisine, it's like a small world where everybody knows everybody, and it's
Right.
worked with everybody at one point. But when Adam shows up and says, look, you've got this, basically your father gave you this job, and I'm going to help, you're going to help me, I'm going to help you, and the dynamic between the two of them. No, I loved that. I thought I had no issues with that at all. I thought that was handled very well. It's just this nice, sort of, Tony's got this unrequited love
Right.
for Adam,
Which gets paid off too. I mean, that's kind of the beauty too, is that they try to deal with their sort of uncomfortable non-relationship dynamic through the film, and then when they have their moment together, when Tony does something great for Adam that gives him a new
Right.
lease on life, they are
Yes.
able to embrace in a really special way. That I love that kind of stuff.
no, I didn't have any issues with that. Good. And I guess the other sort of, I guess, important part, particularly to your approach to this movie, is one of the conditions, because of Adam's past of, drugs and alcohol and all of that. One of the conditions that Tony sets basically is you can run this kitchen, but you have to go in for drug testing. It's like weekly or something, and meet with sort of a therapist, or something who's going to administer these tests. So that character's played by Emma Thompson, and so that's the other. Again, to me, there's just so many characters and so many stories that I wanted more of, and this was another one of those where I thought, you've got Emma Thompson in this great role, you've got Bradley Cooper, you've got this great opportunity to really delve into him, to dig into his issues. We don't spend that much time there. Right.
And honestly, like that actually leads into one of my favorite scenes, one of my favorite love-hate scenes in the movie, because in one of the drug testing scenes, I think it's the last one that they show, but he's wearing a black t-shirt versus the white t-shirt all the other times. That's what I remember from it. But they set it up where she's trying to get more in depth with him, and he strangely walks out onto the terrace and then walks back in as they're talking, which is there's no reason for that. But they get into this more in depth of what does it mean to get these 3 stars for you? And he talks about immortality and what does it mean without it? And then he says death. And I think then she goes into sort of similar to like what we just saw in Molly's Game a couple of weeks ago. She gets this sort of free therapy of saying, you were put up, you were told you were good when you were young. And you were given this thing and it's given you this belief that you need to affect everything. But in truth, we need each other. And that scene, again, you're right. There wasn't enough Emma Thompson in this movie. I mean, she's Emma Thompson, right? But she was able to deliver that super important line, and that scene actually is the scene that stuck with me the most from this movie.
Had dinner with Tony last night.
Wasted his night off with you, huh?
We talked a lot about you.
Isn't there a rule that analysts have about discussing patients with other patients?
I'm not your analyst.
Oh, God.
You know he's in love with you, don't you?
Yes.
He didn't relaunch the restaurant to impress his father. He did it for you.
Yeah.
He wants you to get your 3rd star. Even after all the pain you've caused him.
He wants to see what you'd be like without a knife in your hand fighting for your life.
You know, people pay prostitutes extra to fake orgasms. Maybe Tony pays you extra to fake concern.
Tell me what frightens you.
Spiders, death.
Well, or maybe the imperfection of human relationships. The imperfection of others, of yourself. What happens if you get this 3rd star?
Oh, no, not if, when.
All right, when you get it.
Celebration. Fireworks. Sainthood, immortality.
Perfection.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What happens if you fail?
Plague, pestilence, seas rise, locusts devour. The 4 horsemen ride and darkness descends.
Death.
Sure.
Okay, this is for free. Someone told you when you were very small that you were good, and the world was good, and everything naturally would be good. And then the serpent served you a bad apple, and for all your bullshit, you can't take bad, not in a souffle, not in an apple, and crucially, not in a person.
Should I be writing this down because I don't have a crayon?
Whatever it was, or whoever it was in the past, it's time to get on with it, and you can't do this alone. There's strength in needing others, not weakness.
Make sure to thank Tony for those kind thoughts, Doc.
Oh, that wasn't Tony. That was all me.
Who do you think would enjoy this film, or who would you recommend, this film to? Somebody that liked what other types of films, or who does this appeal to? Because I would say, I would have thought going, hey, if you like, a loner outsider getting a team together to pull off a big job, you're going to love this movie. Yeah. But no, you won't.
No, it's not a heist film. That's for sure.
No, it's not. But it's setting itself up, man. I just love those movies.
I know.
This is not
too.
That movie.
So I will say, to answer your question, I think we go back to that initial recommendation from Pete. I actually think people that love food are going to love this movie, and especially love the process of making food, in that sort of really going through the procedural way of what it does. I think there's a little bit of a love story to that in this movie, and they do it in a really beautiful way. The other piece, I just watched it this afternoon, but I've already recommended it to a lot of people who are going through really tough times in their life, who are dealing with sort of the wreckage of their life and how to put the pieces back together. that's, I mean, for my own stuff that I'm dealing with in my life, that's where this movie hit me. And I was super weepy in this movie. I cried a lot. Oh, but they cheated in one place too. I have to tell you, I want to hear who you recommend it to too. But the big scene though, so the first Michelin scene, when they come in, he comes in, he just got beat up by his drug dealer buddies, right? And then they like, oh, the Michelin people are here. The music cue in that section, all of the instrumental is from Donnie Darko. Is originally composed by, I believe the composer is Michael Andrews for Donnie Darko, and Donnie Darko is like one of my favorite. You'll see at thenextreel.com, you'll see that, my wallpaper is all Donnie Darko. So when that came up, I I sat up on my couch and I was like, wow, here we go. And it's because, they were totally cheating for me to bring me there emotionally. But I wept through a lot of the movie. And I think that people who are dealing with really hard times and looking for recovery that isn't perfect, that has failure along the road when it's potentially going to get harder before it gets better. I think this is kind of a redeeming movie for those people. So I'm already recommending it to those kind of people.
Okay. No, and I see that side of it now that you've sort of connected the dots for me to sort of see what the story really is, what the journey is. Because it's not so much about achieving the goal. It's really about the realization of, as a damaged person that's struggling, you're trying to get your life on track, that you can't do it yourself and you need those other people around you. They depend on you and you need to be sort of vulnerable enough to allow yourself to depend on them.
Right.
I'm going to recommend you watch Chef. Okay. Because again, it's a food thing and it's not the exact same story, but to me, that Chef is a little bit more about approaching it from the artistic side as the chef as creator, and who has control in the creative process is, I think, the story. And after I saw Chef, I thought, oh, is this sort of Jon Favreau sort of severing ties with,
I like him a lot.
Disney?
I like him a lot
with Disney, but he's still working for Disney. I mean, he just did Jungle Book and he's doing Lion King. So to me, it's sort of that statement of maybe the artist and being truly independent and sort of whether or not you have to sell your soul to be successful or if it is really finding that true partnership. So it's a different piece there. But, I think I may have to go back and revisit this because I said I wanted to love this movie and I just had, I think, different expectations that I put upon it that got in the way for me enjoying it from what it was trying to accomplish.
And what you're saying is that Chef is also better than Simply Irresistible.
Yes. I have not seen Simply Irresistible.
Magical Crab.
Because I'm
telling you. Magical Crab.
Because the 90s, they were an interesting era. That's
1999. Very good. Capitals.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So where did this one land on your flick chart?
It's really interesting. And we just did Molly's Game and I think there's a parallel here too because is it John Wells or Welly?
Yeah, John Wells. John Wells.
He was also a writer on West Wing. So there's, kind of a Sorkin connection there. I actually like this a lot more than Molly's Game, and I'll just put that out there because of the emotional curve. I talked about on the Molly's Game show that I wasn't bought in until they brought us in with the emotion of the psychoanalysis of her father. That's something that I missed in Molly's Game that I felt through this. I felt the passion, I felt the emotion throughout this movie. So this movie actually shows up really high on my flick chart, and in a place that it's kind of following a lot of our trailer rewind movies that are really strong movies. So it ended up as number 35 for me out of I'm at 165. And the interesting thing is stacked there, number 33 is Miss Sloane, number 34 is Faults. I actually would probably put this movie above Faults, but not above Miss Sloane. And then when it shows up above 36 is Apocalypse Now, which
oh wow.
And I get the historical significance of Apocalypse Now, but this movie connected with me personally in a way that movie's never going to be able to. So that's why it's there, and it's in that pod of really good trailer rewind movies that we've watched over this time.
Wow. Yeah, so it did not fare as well for me.
I hear that from you.
It ended up at 157 out of 300, so slightly below half. Yeah. But it ended up in a really weird spot for me, and I realized I got some re-ranking I need to do, I think. Because it ended up just above Inglourious Bastards, which it's not one of my favorite Tarantino, and I think I know you enjoy that one probably a lot more than I do. And then just below Get Out, which to me, Get Out is really low. And I don't know how it ended up so low on my
Someone's
flick
been
chart,
messing around with your flick chart.
Exactly. Because I'm like, Get Out should be a lot higher than that.
Right.
Something I got to go rewatch and re-rank and take care of. So, but it's in the middle. So in terms of things that you might be able to connect to. You were on the film board for The Circle,
Yes.
weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 157 Burnt, 158 Inglourious Bastards, 159 The Circle.
Okay.
So that's sort of where I'm putting it. But that's with the first filter I had. So
Right.
I had started watching this one. My wife saw about the first quarter of it, and then something came up, and she didn't get to finish it with me. So I may have an opportunity to rewatch it so she can finish it and I get a chance to see it again with a fresh perspective, which is something I'm looking forward to. I wanted this almost to be like a short mini series because I felt like there was so much more, because I was looking for more from the characters. And I think that's where I felt like, wow, there's such a bigger story to tell. You're giving me all this rich history and I want to get more into that. But if I approach it just focusing on Adam here and his path, I think maybe I'll find myself in a different place.
And I actually think it's good for us to have this discussion about it because, when you come to a Netflix movie, this is going to work for some people in the way that it worked for me. And for others, you're probably going to look at it as, this is why it's sitting alone in a trailer rewind where most people missed it. But right. I think it has value, and there's so many people in this movie, and it's done in a very attractive way. So I think it's a good for us to talk about for sure.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely one to check out. It's not something where I'd say, oh, avoid this.
Right.
If you're looking for something on Netflix, definitely put this on. It may not be exactly the thing you're looking for, but maybe our conversation gives you some inroads, and maybe you'll love it, because it's definitely worth watching. It's something I definitely recommend people sit down. For me, it's like one of those nice Saturday afternoon ones. Gives you some inspiration for cooking a nice meal on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
So, JJ, here at the next reel, we say that when the movie ends, the conversation begins. And I've enjoyed our talk about Burnt. But now that this conversation is ending, it's time to start another movie. What have you got coming up next?
I'm still chasing down. I feel like I've told you this like every time we do this for the last 2 months. I'm still trying to chase down Blade Runner 2049 in the theater because I missed the film board version of that. And it's literally number one on our film board flick chart. And I haven't been able to see, and I want to catch it in the theater. At one point, it was playing in our Museum of Science and Innovation. It's in their Omnimax theater, and I tried to get in there for that. I missed it there, but I'm trying to do that. I just had a really long stint with my kids, which was great. But so I was totally doing kids movies. Like I just saw Jumanji, the new Jumanji. I actually thought that was a lot of fun. So I've been doing a lot of kids movies. So this is now my chance to like get out there and really catch Blade Runner before it gets off the big screen. How about you?
Is it still out there on the big screen?
It's in the cheap theaters, but I mean, honestly, I want to see it on the big screen before it goes away.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, I'm trying to gear up for my Oscar. What are going to be the Oscar picks?
Sure.
So I hoping to get out and see The Post. Spielberg. I always love to see a good Spielberg. So anxiously, trying to schedule some time, try to find when I can get out to see that, because I have a feeling that's going to be on lots of lists. Just saw this past weekend Shape of Water, which is a really fun sort of modern fairy tale.
Right.
Not for kids, though.
No.
Definitely R-rated, but I've really enjoyed that one. So, yeah, I'm sort of in my Oscar prep mode.
Try to get to I, Tonya. It's really good.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's another one on my list. That's right. I forgot about that when you just that's the other true life story to make sure to see. Okay.
I'm evangelizing I, Tonya to the world.
Okay. All right. You're evangelizing it probably almost as much as MoviePass. MoviePass was running a promo where if you went and saw it, I think it was by Friday this past weekend or something, you were entered into some contest. So people are now starting to have some ideas about, now that MoviePass has 1 million subscribers, they now have some weight that they can throw around of like, oh, you want people to see your movie? We've got 1 million people we can direct to your movie.
Yeah. Interesting
model.
Yeah, that's a good way to promote it for sure. Also, before we go about a rating, I would have given this movie a 4-star rating.
Oh, 4 stars.
Yeah. So it's really high for me because of how much of an emotional effect it had.
See, I'm sitting at 2 right now.
Wow.
So.
Okay. Yeah.
See,
I'm not even gathering that from you on this call. So that's
now you know how I feel about your Molly's Game star rating when you were like 2.5.
Was right in the middle.
I was like, what? Oh,
you're saying this is below average.
Yeah, well, three stars for me is solid, rewatch, enjoyable. But like I said, I'm gonna give it another shot, and I'll let you know if it comes up.
That's fair.
For you that are listening, if you haven't already, please give us a rating and review over on iTunes. It helps other film fans discover us, and we hope that you will help other film fans discover us, because there's nothing more thrilling than discovering a group of like-minded fans online. It's like finding a new home or a new kitchen. And once you found us, follow us on Facebook and Twitter for assorted film geekery posts during the week. Or even better, help The Next Reel by supporting us as a patron on patreon.com/thenextreel. But the best thing you can do is go watch a movie with a friend and sit down and have a conversation about it. And if it's one that's been discussed on any of our shows, let us know. We love hearing from you. Hondo.